University. This information was also conveyed to the FBI. Investigators reviewed additional video footage from UVU surveillance and identified Robinson arriving on UVU campus in a gray Dodge Challenger at approximately 8:29 a.m. on September 10th, in which he is observed on video in a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes. When encountered in person by investigators in Washington County on September 12th, in the early morning hours, Robinson was observed in consistent clothing with those surveillance images. Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate. The family member also confirmed Robinson had a gray Dodge Challenger. Investigators identified an individual as the roommate of Robinson. Investigators interviewed that roommate, who stated that his roommate, referring to Robinson, made a joke on Discord. Investigators asked if he would show them the messages on Discord. He opened it and showed several messages to investigators and allowed investigators to take photos of the screen as each message was shown by Robinson's roommate. These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact named Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of these messages included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel. The messages also refer to engraving bullets and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique. Messages from the contact Tyler also mentioned that he had changed outfits. I know there has been speculation as well as to the writing on those casings, those bullet casings, and I believe we have that as well, and I will share that with you now. So the area north of Campus Drive Road where the suspect crossed over, you saw some of that in the video that we released last night, consists of a grassy area with trees on the edge of the UVU campus. Investigators discovered a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a dark-colored towel. The rifle was determined to be a Mauser Model 98 30-06 caliber bolt-action rifle. The rifle had a scope mounted on top of it. Investigators noted inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices, bulges, capital OWO, what's this?" ? Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist!" ! Catch! ! Up arrow symbol, right arrow, and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols. A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow Chow," and a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO." We are indebted to law enforcement across the state who's worked seamlessly together, local law enforcement, state law enforcement, and our federal partners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're grateful for everyone who worked together in such a short amount of time to find this person and to bring justice. I want to thank the public who has been so engaged, reviewing videos, helping us with sending in tips, and helping us get to this point. I want to thank the family members of Tyler Robinson who did the right thing in this case and were able to bring him into to law enforcement as well. I especially want to thank the family of Charlie Kirk. Erica Charlie's parents, his children. I want us to be thinking of them as we bring justice in this case. They will be involved in that justice. We will be working very closely with them as we move through this process as well. This is a very sad day for our country, a terrible day for the state of Utah, but I'm grateful that at this moment we have an opportunity to bring closure to this very dark chapter in our nation's history. With that, I will now turn the microphone over to the Director of the FBI, Kash Patel.
Thank you, Governor. This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk and honor his memory. I want to express my deep gratitude to President Trump, the Vice President, and the entire White House who have been so incredibly supportive with both resources and just personally to the FBI as a team. They had our backs the entire way, and I just want to express my gratitude for giving us the resources we need to operate in this space to bring this sort of justice at this sort of speed. In 33 hours, we have made historic progress for Charlie. Governor Cox, our partnership has been absolutely incredible these last few days. Our partnership will endure. Your state and local partners, your sheriffs, your DPS community has been unbelievably impressive in the hardest of times. And a case like this cannot be solved, cannot be brought without partnering with your state and local authorities. The FBI has a certain role to play, and we will play that role, and we will lead out for the federal government. But Governor Cox, we are so grateful for your state partnership that led out on this investigation. A little bit of the timeline. Charlie was shot at 12:23 p.m. on Wednesday. The first FBI agents arrived on scene in 16 minutes with chiefs of police at 12:39 and secured the scene. The FBI immediately launched fixed-wing assets. We utilized these assets to transport personnel, specialty technicians, hostage rescue teams. We also utilize these assets to go back and forth from the East Coast and here in Utah to transport forensic evidence and other evidence that will be analyzed and is being analyzed at our FBI laboratories in Quantico and other laboratories, including the ATF. At my direction, the FBI released the first set of FBI photos of the suspect at 10 a.m. local time on 9/11. Then, shortly thereafter, the FBI reward of $100,000 was released at 10:45 a.m. local. Myself and Deputy Director Bongino arrived on the scene at approximately 5:30 p.m. on 9/11. The governor led a press conference last night at approximately 8 p.m., where at my direction, the FBI released a never-before-seen video of the suspect. We also released new images to the public of the suspect. And just last night, the suspect was taken into custody at 10 p.m. local time. In less than 36 hours, 33 to be precise, thanks to the full weight of the federal government and leading out with the partners here in the state of Utah and Governor Cox, the suspect was apprehended in a historic time period. And I want to highlight what Governor Cox said. This would not have been possible without you, the media, and you, the public. That's why we went so public, so fast, and we're so transparent, and we're committed to that transparency. The crime scene, just a little bit there. It is a large crime scene. State and local authorities, along with federal authorities, processed that crime scene quickly. And I even had the ability to walk through that crime scene and walk through the steps the suspect took to learn more about what was needed and what resources we needed to bear to create a full picture for the FBI and leadership back in Washington. Furthermore, thankfully to state and local partners, forensic evidence has been seized and continues to be garnered. Forensic evidence has already been evaluated at FBI laboratories in Quantico and state and local authorities here. We will continue to process evidence as we see it, as we collect it, and we will continue to deliver to Governor Cox and his team. Last night, we had a total of approximately 7,000 leads. As of this morning, thanks to your great work, we have over 11,000 leads that were called in to the FBI. And we are running out every single lead that we can. Every one of those leads will be run out. The arrest is a testament to the dedication of good law enforcement being great. and partnerships in law enforcement, which I've tried to highlight as my tenure as the director of the FBI. There is no better relationship for law enforcement than the FBI to partner with state and local authorities, and you've seen it here in these last few days. The FBI Salt Lake Field Office, along with our offices in LA, Phoenix, Denver, San Antonio, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, our headquarters component in Quantico, all participate in the FBI. I want to express my deep gratitude to the employees of the FBI, the men and women, the evidence response team tacticians, the special operators, the agents, the support staff. You have done monumental work in historic time when the public, who had a right to demand such an expeditious solving of an investigation, the FBI answered that call diligently, critically important to our nation, and we delivered. And I'm proud to be their leader, and I'm proud to be the director of the FBI. This is a very much an ongoing investigation, as the governor said, and we will continue to work with state and local authorities to develop the investigation, to provide them the evidence they need for their ongoing prosecutions, and we will be here to answer every call they absolutely have, as long as it takes, for as long as we need to find and apprehend whatever suspects were involved in this crime. Lastly, to my friend Charlie Kirk, rest now, brother. We have the watch, and I'll see you in Valhalla.
Thank you, and good morning. I would just like to take a few minutes as the sheriff to express my gratitude for everybody who has played a part in this investigation. As you know, it's been a vast, a complicated, and a very, very fast-paced investigation. You're looking at people standing up here who are running on, if they got an hour's sleep in the last couple of days, they're probably lucky. It has been very taxing. It has been so impressive, speaking on behalf of the local law enforcement, to see the cooperation that we've seen in this type of case. Across the state, sheriffs, chiefs, our state partners have stepped up and have come to the call on anything that we needed. Our county chiefs have been phenomenal. Our Utah County Attorney, Jeff Gray, who's standing up here with us, has been phenomenal in leading us through this investigation. I would like to thank the federal government for their resources, their assets. Our local team here, our FBI team, has been extraordinary in helping us work through this and bring this person to justice. Most of all, I would like to thank the public, and specifically, I would like to thank the public who turned to prayers and who turned to positiveness for us. I would like to thank them on behalf of the law enforcement community, because we needed those prayers. That's what we needed to get through this. We needed your support, and you gave it to us. We needed your patience, and you gave it to us. And I would like to thank you for the Kirk family, because that's what they need, is your support and your prayers, and that will get us through all of this. So thank you, everybody, for everybody that have stepped up. We've had such a phenomenal response to this. Thank you.
I also want to give a special thanks to the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. Their unwavering support and their commitment to justice is shown true here. And without AG Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and the resources they brought to bear, we would not have been able to complete our mission. And I just want to say special thanks. It's an honor to be a part of the Department of Justice.
Thank you again to our incredible law enforcement team who has worked so hard. Sheriff, I got a solid 90 minutes last night, so I'm probably the most well-rested person up here. Ladies and gentlemen, I get the microphone, so I hope you'll permit me a moment just to share a few more thoughts about where we are and how we got here, and maybe a little bit of where we go from here. I don't want to get too preachy, but I think it's important that we, with eyes wide open, understand what's happening in our country today. I've heard people say, well, why are we so invested in there's violence happening all across our country, and violence is tragic everywhere. And every life taken is a child of God who deserves our love and respect and dignity. This is certainly about the tragic death, political assassination of Charlie Kirk. But it is also much bigger than an attack on an individual. It is an attack on all of us. It is an attack on the American experiment. It is an attack on our ideals. This cuts to the very foundation of who we are, of who we have been, and who we could be in better times. Political violence is different than any other type of violence for lots of different reasons. One, because in the very act that Charlie championed of expression, that freedom of expression that is enshrined in our founding documents, in having his life taken in that very act, makes it more difficult for people to feel like they can share their ideas, that they can speak freely. We will never be able to solve all the other problems, including the violence problems that people are worried about, if we can't have a clash of ideas safely and securely. Even, especially those ideas with which you disagree. That's why this matters so much. Over the last 48 hours, I have been as angry as I have ever been. As sad as I have ever been. And it was, as anger pushed me to the brink, it was actually Charlie's words that pulled me back. I'd like to share some of those. And specifically right now, if I could, I need to talk to the young people in our state, in my state, and all across the country. As President Trump reminded me, he said, you know who really loved Charlie? The youths. And he's right. Young people loved Charlie, and young people hated Charlie. And Charlie went into those places anyway. And these are the words that have helped me. Charlie said, when people stop talking, that's when you get violence. He said, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. The only way out of the labyrinth of suffering is to forgive. Welcome without judgment, love without condition, forgive without limit. He said, always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much. A few months ago, I referenced this last night, Charlie posted to social media, when things are moving very fast and people are losing their minds, it's important to stay grounded. Turn off your phone, read scripture, spend time with friends, and remember, internet fury is not real life. It's going to be okay. He again said, when you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to commit violence. He said, what we as a culture have to get back to is being able to have a reasonable agreement, where violence is not an option. Now, again, to my young friends out there, you are inheriting a country where politics feels like rage. It feels like rage is the only option. But through those words, we have a reminder that we can choose a different path. Your generation has an opportunity to build a culture that is very different than what we are suffering through right now. Not by pretending differences don't matter, but by embracing our differences and having those hard conversations. I think we need more moral clarity right now. I hear all the time that words are violence. Words are not violence. Violence is violence. And there is one person responsible for what happened here. And that person is now in custody and will be charged soon,
Thank God.
and will be held accountable.
Thank God.
And yet, all of us have an opportunity right now to do something different. I want to thank my fellow Utahns. This bad stuff happens. For 33 hours, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us. That somebody drove from another state, somebody came from another country. Sadly, that prayer was not answered the way I hoped for. Just because I thought it would make it easier on us if we could just say, "Hey, we don't do that here." And indeed, Utah is a special place. We lead the nation in charitable giving. We lead the nation in service every year. But it did happen here, and it was one of us. But I want you to look at how Utahns reacted the last 2 nights. There was no rioting. There was no looting. There were no cars set on fire. There was no violence. There were vigils and prayers and people coming together to share the humanity. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I believe is the answer to this. We can return violence with violence. We can return hate with hate. And that's the problem with political violence, is it metastasizes. Because we can always point the finger at the other side. And at some point, we have to find an off-ramp, or it's going to get much, much worse. But see, these are choices that we can make. History will dictate if this is a turning point for our country. But every single one of us gets to choose right now if this is a turning point for us. We get to make decisions. We have our agency. And I desperately call on every American, Republican, Democrat, liberal, progressive, conservative, MAGA, all of us to please, please, please follow what Charlie taught me. I'll just conclude with words I share often from a friend and author, Yuval Levin, who was asked if he was optimistic about our country. And he said, "I'm not optimistic." He said, "I hate optimism." God, that sounds bad. But he said, optimism is a vice. It's this idea that good things are just going to happen. And he said, in the history of the world, good things have never just happened. He says, "I'm not optimistic, but I am hopeful." And hope is the virtue that sits between the vices of optimism and pessimism. Hope is the idea that good things are going to happen because we can make them so. I still believe in our country. And I know Charlie Kirk believed in our country. I still believe that there is more good among us than evil. And I still believe that we can change the course of history. I'm hopeful because Americans can make it so. Ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Please speak to whether the suspect is speaking with authorities and his demeanor, Tyler Robinson, when he turned himself in.
I cannot speak to that. Well, I will leave that up to you to interpret what those engravings mean. I think the clearest one that says "catch fascist," there's not, and by the way, that's like catch like a ball, catch this. That's I think that speaks for itself.
Beyond that, is there anything in your view that you discovered that may have radicalized or changed the problem to commit such a horrific?
There's nothing more that we can share at this time.
Governor, you indicated that he had been communicating with a friend on Discord about the gun. Do you anticipate any more arrests?
We do not at this time have any information that would lead to any additional arrests.
Do you believe he acted alone?
Yes, but the investigation is ongoing.
How he came into custody of police and where he is right now?
Yes, so right now, Mr. Robinson has been booked into the Utah County Jail. You heard the president this morning report that that he was taken into custody. That his family and a friend helped to deliver him into custody of law enforcement in Washington County. For those of you that don't know where Washington County is, it is the southwesternmost part of the state of Utah. It's about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive from here, where we are right now, and that's where he lived and where they turned him in. Please, I'll go here. I can't share any more than what I've already shared. Yeah. So how we obtained the gun? The gun was found here. Yeah, so I don't have much more details on that. We do know that he drove. We had his car here on campus, and then we had his car going south back to the St. George. It's actually the city of Washington in Washington County. I'm sorry. We don't have any information that would lead us to believe that. Yes, in fact, it was just released. Yes. I can't answer that right now. Yeah, thank you. Over here. I absolutely believe that this is a watershed in American history. Yes. The question is, what kind of watershed? And that chapter remains to be written. Is this the end of a dark chapter in our history, or the beginning of a darker chapter in our history? Look. I mean, if you look at true political assassinations in this country of someone of this stature, this feels a lot like the late '60s, and having one so gruesomely displayed on camera in all of our hands and in all of our pockets. We are not wired as human beings. Biologically, historically, we have not evolved in a way that we are capable of processing those types of violent imagery. And by the way, we've seen another one with a gruesome stabbing very recently that went viral. This is not good for us. It is not good to consume. Social media is a cancer on our society right now. And I would encourage people to log off, turn off, touch grass, hug a family member, go out and do good in your community. That is happening, and it's happening organically right now. I had a friend in a small city in Utah who said, we're getting together, the Republicans and Democrats in my little town are getting together to have a discussion last night, just to find a way to find their better angels. So yes, this could be, I mean, again, you have to go back to JFK to have seen a video live of something like this happening. I wasn't born until 1975, but I know that things were really dark in the late '60s. Sorry to some of you. I know some of you were there, but this is our moment. Do we escalate, or do we find an off ramp? And again, it's a choice. It's a choice, and every one of us gets to make that choice. Two more questions right here.
Clarify that the release of those enhanced images at 8 p.m., the timeline that Director Patel gave us, led to the arrest at 10 p.m. Is there a direct connection between those two events?
I cannot comment if there is a direct connection or not, but all I can say is that that through some process, the family came to know that this had happened.
One more thing, Governor. Could you just clarify the clothing issue you mentioned earlier? Was he changing outfits? Could
Correct.
you just clarify this?
Yes. So when he's first spotted on campus, he has different clothing on, and then he changes clothing on the roof, and then changed back into that clothing at some point, so that when he was apprehended, when he was arrested, the clothing matched the clothing he had on before the shooting here at UVU. Last question here. Yes. Yeah. I don't have any information on the mental illness part. He was not a student here at UVU. He was living and had lived for a long time with his family in Washington County, in the southernmost part of our state. Thank you, everyone, for your great work in getting this information out. I will just say, process-wise, this may be important. I know many of you aren't familiar with the process in Utah. I think it's important that you understand that basically we have 3 days for charging documents to be filed. A CI will be filed. We'll have more information then, more detailed information as those charging documents are filed in preparation for a preliminary hearing. So 3 days. So we would anticipate then that early next week those charging documents will be filed. We will obviously be working. The county attorney will be working very closely with Mr. Kirk's family as those documents and decisions are prepared and made. Thanks, everyone.
All right, officials in Utah wrapping up that press conference. You heard the governor open it up saying, "We got him," identifying the suspect in the shooting and killing of Charlie Kirk as 22-year-old Tyler Robinson from Utah. The governor just saying there that he is not a student at UVU, but that in speaking to family members...
Tyler Robinson just throwed his complete total life away.
What happened not only on campus, the shooting of Charlie Kirk, but what happened before, the hours, the days before, information that a family member recognized and reached out and cooperated with investigators, that investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who said Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent...
I want to make note of the last question pertaining to mental illness. It's very obvious that the psychiatric communities in America has inundated the crime scene whenever it comes to people committing heinous, cruel, insensitive, malice acts like this. And once more, that is an area that has helped to normalize a way of saying, well, this individual was sick in the head and we shouldn't hold them accountable for what that they have done. I'm going to say, out of the whole mass of this thing called mental illness, first of all, you probably got about half of those people that are only playing like they've got some sort of mental illness problem. The other half probably do have problems, but it wouldn't be on the level of them not knowing, consciously speaking, of whether or not they're going to commit an act, such a heinous act such as this, and suffer the consequences on account of it. The psychiatric wards, ever since Ronald Reagan decided to let all of them out that wasn't considered violent, has been a cancer to the American people in more ways than you can think of. And I just want to read a few facts here pertaining to some things that I've read up on pertaining to Utah, because I've been through Utah. Utah, to me, was a very dry, I ain't going to say it was a desert state, but it was extremely dry, and it's extremely hot in the summertime. I think their average is like 105, but yet no, in the wintertime, it gets very, very cold, and I think in total population in Salt Lake City, they get something like 200 inches of snow. So it's a very diversified state. This is what I skimmed over real quick. What percentage of Utah is white? According to the statistics, over the share from 80.4% down to 75.4%. And then it gives an average of 88.6 white Europeans, 2.8 Asians, 1.8 American Indians, and Alaskan natives 1.6. I don't know why that's in there, but it's in there. Is Utah growing? Utah population grows approximately 1.5%, or that's what it did in the year 2024. Growth of 14.4%. What are the 5 facts about Utah? State capital, Salt Lake City. Statehood day, January the 4th. Population, 3.4 million is what it's got here. Household income, 79,000. Nicknamed Beezyville State. Agriculture, food products, cattle, corn, hay, wheat, barley, etc. What is the whitest state in the U.S.? Vermont, 99.9%. If people are that conscientious about color, as far as being prejudiced about other people's suntans. What is the crime rate in Utah? Utah violent crime rate in 2023 was 232 per 100,000 residents, which is now lower than the pre-pandemic 2019 rate of 237, lowest rate in 2014. Increase from recent high of 261 during 2020. What is the cost of living in Utah? Approximately 95.8. Let's move on here. Look at a couple other things. Utah has old and new industrial. Does Utah get snow? Here you go. Total 273 inches. I missed that a little bit. Utah's biggest industrial, 8 billion. Coal, cattle, ranching, self production, and government services. What state has the most Mexicans? The state, California, the state with the largest percentage of Hispanics and Latinos, New Mexico, at 47%. What's the biggest crime? Average assault is 25.3%. Rapes is 11.9. Robberies is 1.1. Murder, Utah ranked 38th among states in high violent crime rate, 230 offense per 100,000 people. Largest city in Utah is Salt Lake City. Let me go on here. Is it cheaper to live in Colorado or Utah? Colorado has a higher cost of living. Also, their real estate is higher. Read that a while ago. Something about the Mormons here own Pepsi. I didn't know that. Mormons ain't allowed to have tattoos on their body. Do Mormons celebrate Christmas? Yes, they celebrate Christmas of the birth of Jesus Christ. Latter-day Saints do celebrate Christmas with other Christmas worldwide. How to tell someone is a Mormon? Mormons have a health code that issues excruciates from alcohol, beverages, tobacco, tea, coffee, and additional substances. Okay. What is the downside to Utah? It says here the housing expenses. All right. What is Utah state animal? I don't even. Elk, believe it or not. I can't believe that. Elk? I guess it is pretty. It's north of Colorado, or it's actually northwest of Colorado, the state of Colorado. Is Utah conservative or liberal? Utah voters predominantly Republican, self-independent Latter-day Saints are more likely to vote for the Republican ticket than non-Mormons. Utah is one of the most Republican states in the nation, is what it says here. All right, let's go on here. What is the fruit? Apples, peaches, sweet cherries, sweet corn. What is the main source of income in Utah? Industrial income tax and state sales tax. What is the coldest month in Utah? December and January. Temperature exceeds, or can exceed, can get as hot as 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And the winter can get as cold as 5 degrees below Fahrenheit. Winter and summer is a dry air. Summer are hot, frequent regions above 100 degrees, while winters are cold and snowy. Very diversified. It's a very diversified state. I actually like the people in Utah. Whenever I come up through there, I stop probably in about 3 or 4 different body shops, and I kind of saunter around a little bit. What state is 90% white? New Hampshire, 96.9% white. Wow. New Hampshire, 98%. Maine, 97%. I guess black people don't like it whenever it's real cold. I'm assuming that's what that is. What is the state that's cheapest real estate? West Virginia. Imagine that. Look what Wheeling, West Virginia done to myself years ago in driving through it in the year 1989. Annual income $20 an hour is what it says here. $67,000 a year. That's better than Tennessee. Tennessee still got minimum wage rates at, I think, $3.65 or something like that. Less than $4 an hour. It's unbelievable. Talks about the housing there. Mormons believe in Jesus Christ, Son of God, Creator of the world. I don't understand that. It says here, no, Mormons do not believe in the Christian God or Jesus Christ. Their God is a formal man who lived how to be God and developed into God. That's what it says here. Do Mormons marry non-Mormons? Marrying a non-Mormon is allowed. However, the marriage ceremony cannot be done in the temple. They put so much emphasis on Joseph Smith and the Mormon temple out there to the degree that I think it has shied a great deal of people away from Mormonism, because you tend to wonder if they're actually trying to put a teacher or a prophet of God pertaining to Joseph Smith being equal to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I've said this before, and I'll always say this: no matter who you try to compare Jesus Christ with, you are diminishing the statute of Jesus Christ's position. And not even Mary herself, that had Jesus Christ, is equal to Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ was not just 100% human, but he was also 100% divine. There's no prophet that's ever come, that ever will come, that will be 100% divine. They may be 50% divine, they may be 60% divine, they may be 75% divine, but there's no prophet that either ever has come, including all the other different religions all over the world, or any other prophet that will come that will be equal to Christ. And the reason why I say this is because Jesus himself said that in the last days many false prophets and many false teachers would come, and that if they say that I'm in a desert place, do not come. If they say that I'm in a cave or a tunnel, do not come. For in that day, many people will either confess to be Christ, or they will confess to be equal to Christ, and no person on the planet is equal to Christ. Like I said, I went through Utah. I guess it was probably I think it was about August. And then I went on up into Boise. And then I went on up into Oregon. And once I got up into Oregon, I could really tell that I had definitely left the eastern seaboard over here on this side of the Mississippi River, because I had never thought in a million years that you could pull up at a gas station and it would be unlawful for you to get out and fill your own gas tank up, until I got over into the Oregon area. And I found out real quick that that was part of their laws, that whenever you pulled up in a gas station, somebody come out, like back in the old days, back in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s, and filled your car up and offered to check your tires and wash your windows, and you're supposed to leave them a tip. And I guess they do that because of safety violations pertaining to danger factors. I think there's one other state up towards Maine or up towards Boston or up towards somewhere in the East Coast. It's just a little, I think it's Vermont or something like that, that does the same thing, or that they did. I don't know that they still do, but by and large, I didn't stop at the temple because I felt like that Mormonism was just a bit above and beyond that in which what I was familiar with. And the fact of the matter is, whenever I went through Utah, my sole desires was not to change from Christianity to Mormonism, which I don't even know that you could even do that if you're not born into that particular organization. Some people call Mormonism a cult. And I'm pretty sure they probably got that idea years and years ago whenever they practiced polygamy, whenever a man could have more than one wife. I think today that they have stiffened their laws in not only the church but the state as well, to the degree that now that particular practice is considered unlawful. It's considered bad. It's considered ungodly. But by and large, from the way that they talked, from the way that they dressed, from the way that they acted, they had a great deal of resemblance to the people in Tennessee. Kind of redneckish, kind of country. I'm glad that they caught this idiot, because an idiot like this right here could actually formulate rioting in America. And the reason why that I'm so glad, first of all, he should have been captured for doing a crime like this. Anybody should have been captured for doing a crime like this. But more so with Young being on Young, and knowing that Mr. Kirk was such of a youthful desirable figure, and basically the young people latching on to him because he himself was young, opened up a brand new venue regarding college riots and fights and etc. And it still may. I'm just thankful that they got this guy as soon as they did. And as far as I'm concerned, they should throw any type of mental illness completely out the door, period, because he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly who he wanted to shoot. He was not shooting at random. It was a pinpointed target of going to take out a celebrity. That way he could gain celebrityism himself. And that's exactly what he's done. He has gained celebrityism towards being a celebrity hound off somebody else's work. So as far as I'm concerned, this is where the media is messing up by showing his face. His face should have never been shown on TV. In other words, they should have a head right there, but it should be a darkened head and a neck and a body, and they shouldn't be showing his face. Because why? Because why? Because a lot of these people commit these type of heinous acts thinking that they're going to be able to make millions and millions of dollars in writing books and maybe even making movies off of it, that the proceeds, I don't think, should ever be allotted to the person that commits that type of a crime. Ever. Now, does that mean that they don't have a right to tell their side of the story, and hard-headed people or people just as sick as what they was don't have a right to listen to them or to read their books? No, they can talk all they want. We live in America. Freedom of speech. I mean, you know, even Christ said that sinners love sinners, that the blind leadeth the blind. Basically, you got evil, cruel, insensitive people that actually look up and support evil, cruel, insensitive people. They thrive off of them. They're heroes. They're sick. But the bad thing about the law in America, because of the psychiatric wards, it has made judges and attorneys that much more liberal, to the degree that they basically get off scot-free, and the American taxpayers got to pay room and board for the rest of their lives while they're stuck off into a cozy little prison somewhere. And at the same time, they call that justice. Well, that would only apply if the person that committed the act was so deranged, mentally deranged, that they didn't know daylight from dark, they couldn't feed themselves, and they couldn't bathe themselves, and they couldn't dress themselves. How many people do you see committing these heinous acts that fits under this category? Hardly any of them. Hardly any of them. Because if you know daylight from dark, if you know how to feed yourself whenever you get hungry, if you know how to bathe, if you know how to clothe yourself, you know the main faculties of life. You know the main faculties of life, regardless whether little Johnny peed in the bed and somebody spanked his little butt whenever he was little or whatever. So I put a great deal of the blame pertaining to the American laws being so liberal today on the psychiatric people. Because why? Because number one, they're letting people get off scot-free, and number two, somebody such as myself that has been gifted with God, that has gotten some sort of a gift or a talent from God, a lot of times they'll focus in on that person, similar like they have me, towards wanting to put that person out of open population. And of course, Weakley County cannot deny that that's exactly what they wanted to do shortly after my brother died, and I basically pleaded guilty to a charge that I shouldn't have pleaded guilty to because my brother and I was concerned about 3 little children across the road. And while I'm out on probation, supervised probation, I'm up in Humphreys County doing my thing, go into a little store in Waverly, Tennessee, and get to telling a doomsday prepper a little bit about my story, and the next thing you know, he wigs out, and the next thing you know, somebody calls somebody that calls somebody else. That I guess the orders must have come out of Nashville pertaining to the judge up here that got orders to the probation officers that drove down here purposely to tell me that if I did not go to a psychiatric ward and get okayed by a doctor, that I was all right, that I wasn't a harm to myself and I wasn't a harm to society, that it would be considered an open probation violation, and I would be standing back in front of Judge Parham again. And if they deny that they done that, they're lying out their teeth. Besides that, I was smart enough that I recorded it. I took my telephone while they was talking to me, and I recorded every bit of it. And it's somewhere in some of my work. Facebook, YouTube, somewhere out there. I recorded it and put it out there to the public. So that right there is proof in the pudding, in addition to what they done in 2005 towards lying and putting me in the category of me having terrorist implications, like I was a mean, cruel, insensitive person wanting to get out here and wanting to do bodily harm to society. It was them in Martin, Tennessee. It was Tommy Moore and your law enforcement agencies around here that started that. That was in the year 2005. That basically caused me to file bankruptcy. I lost $5,000 of a bondsman. I had to move out of the area. My wife wanted a divorce, and basically I was just thrown to the wolves. That was in 2005. They was the ones that started not only the movement of the rejection, going all the way back into 1989, whenever I first stood out into the eyes of the general public, but they was the ones that was either allowing for other people to provoke me, or they themselves was coming at me in false accusations. Because in order for you to have reached that degree in committing a crime such as they were charging me for, which was falsifying files, you was supposed to have either pulled down a fire alarm, or you was supposed to have been in a theater crying fire, fire, fire. Once the authorities realized in this area that they wasn't going to be able to stamp me towards somebody that was being psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced to the degree that I was out of my mind, off my rocker, then they changed their strategy after 9/11, once more in trying to protect the villain pertaining to the Luciferian Lucifer, Satan in the spirit world over in Saudi Arabia, trying to protect them while basically going after the Christians. The true, authentic, born-again Christians, because the Bible says, and this is the only thing that has saved me because I got a record to prove it, to be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. And in every situation, it didn't matter if it was the situations in Kentucky, it didn't matter if it's the situations in Tennessee, it didn't matter if it was the situations in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, it didn't matter if it was the situations down in Atlanta. In every one of those situations, I had to freeze up and depend upon the Holy Spirit of protecting me, no matter what occurred in my life, No matter if they filled me full of holes or beat the you-know-what out of me, I had to freeze up and not show any type of hostility. Because if I did, then that would have been my record towards indicating that I was a violent person. Violent in a sense towards wanting to commit crimes to the open population. So it was only the Holy Spirit, God the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit that saved me throughout all that, because in total I couldn't tell you the amount of guns that I've actually had pointed at me. I'm going to estimate well over 250 guns at different intervals at different times throughout my life. By cops. In some form or fashion. So you can't tell me that this anti-Semitism, spiritual warfare that's been going on in America, first of all, is wrong, pertaining to our Constitution, that basically began in 1988, whenever Homeland Security Secret Service in Madison County intervened in my life. And then shortly after that, in 1991, me on the way to Washington, D.C. after Desert Storm and Desert Shield broke out, in trying to stop the government in preventing them of making a mistake and going to war with Saddam Hussein, because Saddam Hussein never did have mass destruction, bombs of mass destruction like Colin Powell was trying to pawn off onto the world that the majority of the people bought into. Now, was Saddam Hussein a bad person? Yes. Did Saddam Hussein commit heinous acts against his own people? Yes, he did. But basically what the United States done by going over there and having him removed created more of a problem than it did a solution to it. Created more of a problem than the solution to it. Once more, I've seen our laws in America twist and turn to the degree that now up is down and down is up. And if something like this would have happened going back into the early 1900s, or even somewhere give or take shortly after World War II, it would have been no doubt that this individual would immediately gotten a death sentence towards being executed. And as far as I'm concerned, because he has owned up to this crime, in which, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that he did. I'm glad that he finally come clean. I'm pretty sure his conscience must have started bothering him. These type of people should only be allowed to have one appeal, and one appeal alone, regardless of what state that they may be in, on this type of heinous crime, because it's pretty obvious that he done it. But I guarantee you there'll be a team of attorneys, there'll be a team of lawyers, there'll be a team of doctors that'll fly in towards trying to save his hide, even though his hide does not deserve to be saved. Now, if that's not generating liberalism with our laws, in basically watering down our laws, I don't know what is. I mean, I feel sorry for the guy. I feel sorry for the kid. Pretty obvious. He's been mismanaged some way or another. I don't know if it was bad parents. I don't know. Maybe he got into some drugs or something. I don't know. But nobody put a gun to his head to make him get a long arm rifle and do that kind of damage to an individual. He done that in the aspect of wanting to draw attention to himself and basically get on the same status flow as far as a celebrity, being a celebrity hound, as the celebrity was. And how many times have we seen that? I mean, it happened with the Beatles. I mean, it's happened, I guess if you get to looking throughout history here in America, it's happened several times where famous people have been targeted. That's one reason why the people over in California, Hollywood, that are famous basically wants to thrive in one little area. That way that they're protected by the law if somebody does go over there and wanting to start shooting and killing famous people to become famous. I don't think that individual's face should have never been shown on TV. You know why? Because all that does is draw incitement for others to do the same thing. They'll get to thinking, well, if he done it and he become famous overnight, that reaches the same status flow of what Mr. Clark was, then how come I can't do it? Especially if your laws are so liberal to the degree that basically all they get is a spanking or a pat on the back of the hand. There has to be a reason why that gun violence has went absolutely out of control in America, other than it being spiritual warfare, other than it being anti-Semitism towards people wanting to attack Jews and Christian centers and kindergarten schools and etc. Innocent bystanders. There has to be a reason why that the wicked over here in America has been doing what they've been doing, and primarily the reason for that is because they've been getting away with it in some form or fashion. At least the people that does commit these type of acts, and I know this may be interpreted in the wrong way, but I don't mean for it to be, but at least the people that commit suicide shortly after they commit an act, at least they're going out the same way that they committed the acts upon to the victims of, towards basically ending their own lives, basically dying in a dignified way. But a great deal of them out there slip through the cracks, just like a great deal of your youth under the age of 18. They use that as an umbrella, a protection shield, that if they get out here and commit an act like this, next thing you know, they'll be off scot-free after they turn 18. All their records will be abolished and nobody will know anything about it. And they'll be able to get out into the open population just as if everybody else was out in open population. Our laws need to be conformed. Psychiatric wards needs to stick to psychiatric problems pertaining to people that can't dress themselves, feed themselves, and don't know the difference between daylight and dark. People that are violent or have violent intentions. It shouldn't be coming from law enforcement agencies like over here in Martin, Tennessee, that after they arrested me and drugged me back to Martin, and me being questioned in front of about 10 different officers, including the chief of police, David Moore, of what was your intentions, and I explained to him, well, it wasn't harmful. It wasn't, I was passing out Bible literature, and I told the guy that was passing out Bible literature that there was an explosion of controversy in my life, and as far as I'm concerned, it's still an explosion of controversy in my life. I'm still being scrutinized, questioned, analyzed, studied, or looked at. Why? Because I'm different? Why? Because I got a message that's coming directly out of the Bible pertaining to biblical Bible prophecy? That's only part of it. The other part is that people didn't want to see biblical Bible prophecy be fulfilled, and they was willing to step over the line beginning in Kenton, Tennessee, towards destroying whoever that they had to destroy, to stopping or destroying God's purpose and God's plan of God's choices. And it only started over in Kenton, Tennessee in 1983, but it growed, it intensified, kind of like the fish story. You know, you caught a fish beginning with it being only 6 inches, and then it goes to another person's mouth, and now it's 8 inches. It goes to another person's mouth. Now it's 12 inches. It goes to another person's mouth. Now it's a 2-foot fish. That's what they've done around here. They exploited my character. And whenever I come back to Northwest Tennessee in 2014, proof is in the pudding in how that basically about 10, 12 different families was attacking us again and again and again and again. That the weekly county courts were just sitting back, waiting, laying wait. Well, hopefully it'll work this time. Hopefully either David or Juby will go over the line to the degree that we can actually go in and end all this. We can get them completely out of the eyes of the public. That way, shut case. We don't have to worry about listening to him or anything about what he's been doing for the past 35, 40 years. And the whole time I've been preaching out of the King James Version Bible pertaining to love, mercy, grace, and the gifts of God. And yes, the end time messages pertaining to Revelations and Daniel. But because the subject matter in which what I was teaching on, which you have to admit, the book of Revelations, corresponding with the last 2 chapters of Daniel, is a violent, violent way for the world to end. That has already been basically marked in stone. I didn't write the book of Revelations. I didn't write none of the books in the King James Version Bible. And you've never heard me say any of the above towards putting myself in the same position as some of their prophets over there pertaining to the temple over in Salt Lake City, as far as me saying, well, you got to be a member of this particular religion, or you got to support me, or you have to do this, this, and that just to be able to make it into heaven. You've never heard me say that in the past 35, 40 years since I've been putting material out to the public, and you never will. You never will. And it's one thing for people to stand idly by and say, well, you know what? We probably should have helped that person, or we probably should have supported that person, but we chose not to. That's on one level that I know society is guilty of here in Northwest Tennessee. But on the other level, towards them purposely trying to entrap me, or purposely trying to provoke me, or purposely trying to do other things, these are the people that does these things. Just like I got a neighbor down the road here. I've done texted him or called him twice now. The dogs come up here and got the cat food container and drug it all the way down there almost to his house. I've done told him that we got a problem with the animal towards him coming up here provoking my dog. My dog is a Great Pyrenees mixed with a full-blooded German Shepherd that's got almost 400 PSIs in his jaws, that if he wanted to get aggressive, and I hope to God that he never does, but if he does, he could actually do damage to bones. He could crack bones. It ain't nothing for him to take a 2x4 and start chewing on it and chew it all to pieces. Now, a poodle ain't going to do that. Or the majority of your animals ain't going to be able to do that. There's only a few animals out there that can take a 2x4 and chew it up in splinters. And he's one of them. And because of it, I got to be that much more sensitive, especially whenever that dog comes up here and aggravates my dog. And the next thing you know, my dog starts running and breaks the cable. I'm talking about a metal-coated cable. Breaks it. And the next thing you know, I got to jump off the lawnmower while mowing to run my dog down to make sure that he don't go down there and tear that dog up. Chew that dog all to pieces. And the next thing you know, I'll be liable, even though it was his dog that provoked my dog in doing that. You know, animals are going to be animals. Animals are going to be animals, and if you don't train them properly towards being domestic animals, they're going to have wild tendencies. And I think, this is just my opinion about the guy's dog down the road here, I think that the animal is probably just lonely and probably just wants to play. But my dog don't know that. My dog is very territorial. And I've already told them this problem, and every time they leave, it don't matter if they're going up Beech Grove Road or if they're going down Thompson Road, that dog will chase that car almost to either Thompson's or almost down here to Mr. Hotto's house. Just chasing, just to be chasing. Maybe that's the way that the dog gets its thrills. I don't want my dog chasing cars. I don't want my dog running with a bunch of other dogs that people call their pets, because to me, they're not pets if you're letting them run rampant like that. To me, they're just an animal. And the thing about it is, whenever it comes to an animal that don't know the difference between a 2,000-pound car that can crush them like that, it kind of speaks volumes about the owners of those type of animals that lets their dogs run loose like that, in addition to the fact that there is a leash law in the state of Tennessee towards you supposed to keep your animals tied up, especially if they're being mischievous and going on other people's property doing things. Now, he's had ample time. He's texted me and let me know, well, I'm trying to find a home for him. I'm trying to find a home for him. Okay, if that's what you want to do. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do with your animal. And I'll never say anything about anybody's animal running loose out here in the Beech Ridge TWRA area, as long as their animals are confined and they know their distances. They're not being mischievous. But whenever they're coming down here being mischievous, or if they show any type of aggression towards being aggressive, then we got a problem. And I think as a landowner, I think I got a right to make that determination. And that's basically what started World War III around here, pertaining to the Hatfields and McCoys with the Jackson family and the Ridgway family and the Sheffield family, that the courts up here in Dresden, Tennessee could have cared less about. And that crap went on for 3 consecutive solid years. That started with respect. Respecting your neighbor. Respecting what your neighbor requires out of you. I keep my dog tied up. The only time I let my dog out and let him loose is to get exercise, and I monitor him. I'm watching him. I'm observing where he's going, what he's doing. And I'll let him get it out of his system, and I'll tie him back up. David done the same thing until somebody poisoned Benny, his dog down there. That's another thing that I got to worry about whenever I let my dog out on a leash. I got to walk the yard towards making sure didn't nobody throw out a piece of meat that's poisoned. I hate to say that about the neighborhood that I live in, but there's certain people out here that are cruel and indifferent. They're mean. And they're out to hurt you, and it don't matter in what form or fashion that they try to hurt you in. Just like this individual right here. They're out to hurt people. They're sick. They need deliverance, first of all, but they need to be punished for the crimes that they're committing. And if our laws don't stand in trueness of this, then you don't no longer have a law. Now you have a mockery. And the fact of the matter is, the guy down the road here, he could put his dog on a leash, just like I put my dog on a leash, until he finds a home for the animal. But has he done that in the past 3 or 4 days? Nope. Speaks volumes about what they're doing. They could care less about what's going on down here pertaining to my property rights. There you go there. It's unbelievable in how people try to manipulate right from wrong, knowing that they're doing wrong, but they want to plead either insanity or they want to plead the fifth whenever they really get cornered up in basically your obligations and your responsibilities. It's absolutely an insult to people's intelligence and what people try to do and get away with.
Up to it. We saw a confrontational approach, but it was event-oriented. In other words, at rallies where there would be large armed groups of people like skinheads and this and that, the hard left would go after them. What has since occurred, though, particularly with respect to what is perceived as authoritarian actions that are hurting people that they know they feel closer to what their grievance is, rather than an abstraction from the past that was more event limited. I think now you're seeing people believe across the political spectrum, and we've seen this in social surveys, while the hard right had more people that believed violence is legitimate to achieve political outcomes, we are seeing it on the left too, not in as greater numbers. The homicides are not in as greater numbers, but the dam has broke. In other words, 2020 saw violence viewed as a legitimate basis to respond to what they saw as a threat of armed people like militias and others. Now, the people that are considered legitimate targets of aggression are anyone associated with the government or supporting of it, as opposed to just these kind of more narrow attacks that took place at rallies that we saw at the latter end of last decade. Charlottesville changed things, and I think the use of force and aggression overall as political currency that is coming from institutions has now bled out there. What I mean is stereotyping, demonization of others, and some kind of aggressive macho posturing is now part of the institutional mainstream of the United States, and young people who have opted out on either side of the political spectrum believe increasingly violence is a legitimate means for political outcomes.
And have I not been saying the exact same thing? But they're crafty about it. They want to use other means to be able to aggravate or agitate somebody's life, and the whole time it's a pointless way of saying, I don't like you, I don't respect you, and I'm not going to abide by any of your wishes. It's evil, and it's coming in a crafty type way, but people like me can see through it, and hopefully people like this individual can too as well.
Questions after. No, it's critical, because what happens is people look at who's wearing what jersey. They're mean, we're not. We are having a societal issue where political violence and people who opt out of things like the First Amendment, respecting the dignity of all individuals, they've opted out. But what they say is the American institutions, whether it's governance or education or others, are disappearing people or antagonistic towards them. And what has happened is, as aggression and stereotyping and fear has been laid out onto the socio-political landscape, that's consumed not just on MSNBC, but it's or even at Oxford. It's consumed with memes and other hot-button emotional deliveries that resonate with young people who are now looking for meaning in their existence after leaving their families or becoming young adults. So they are particularly susceptible for this kind of hot-button engagement when they are already angry and have deep distrust for the communal institutions that held us together in generations past.
Well, see, that's just it. And that's the part that the adult society ain't getting, that hopefully Donald Trump is the fact that they have failed us. If you're $37 trillion in debt, and you're having a cut here and cut there, and you're taking away all these programs, and now retail stores like Walmart has been getting 98% of everything, or 95%, or maybe 90%, or 80%, or however much percent it is, getting all their stuff from overseas, rather than helping the homeland pertaining to the industry here. And it's very obvious that even Donald Trump said that in the past 25, 30 years, we've lost over 90,000 factories. Something is going on that the youth does not like. And it's obvious that people that's talking to the adults, the elderly, the people that has gotten us in this shape, it's not resonating with them. We're not seeing a movement towards trying to reverse this, because their whole lives is based upon whether or not what the adults do or what the adults does not do. And right now I'm talking about my granddaughter that's 2.5 years old. What kind of a world is she going to have to walk off into whenever she gets old enough to work at the age of 18, which will be what, 20 and 45, year 20 and 45, 20 years from now, or 20, let's say 20 and 40. You're 20 and 40. What kind of a country is she going to walk off into in seeing how that we've been stabbed in the back by all these retailers going overseas and getting all this stuff because they can get it cheaper over there than what we can manufacture right here in our own backyard? What kind of a future is she going to have? Especially if the political parties of today still is not getting the message towards, okay, you screwed up. Now what are you going to do about unscrewing it up? Because I guarantee you, Walmart is still getting 75, 80, however many percent before COVID ever hit, before this ever really come out into the mainstream and everybody looking at it. I just about guarantee you they're still importing just as much stuff today as what they was 5, 7, 10 years ago. It hasn't changed. They're still trying to cut corners, and in the meantime, while they're cutting corners, they're stabbing the youth in the back. They're stabbing the future of the youth in the back. And the youth is seeing this, and they're responding in a negative way. You know, there used to be an old saying back years ago, whenever I was raised up on the farm, that the squeaky wheel was the one that got the grease. In other words, if that wheel started squeaking, either on a disc or either a trailer or whatever, you knew that it was squeaking because it needed grease. Well, you ain't going to grease the one that ain't squealing. You're going to grease the one that is squealing. Why? Because you know it's rubbing metal on metal and making that squalling sound. Obviously, the people that has been talking in relation to what I've been saying and putting out all these videos for all this length of time, I've been talking, but it's almost like I've been talking to myself. It's almost like I just was go out here and talk to my dog or talk to a tree, because hadn't really nobody been listening. And that's the whole peer factor towards how that this younger generation is raising up, because they know that their future lies within their squeakiness. Well, if you can't get their attention one way, guess what? They're going to get your attention in another. Especially these children that don't have nothing else to lose. And you wonder how come they resorted to drugs. You wonder how come that they resorted to homicide, committing crime. You wonder how come that they resorted to basically taking a handful of pills and becoming suicidal. It's because of what the elderly, the ones that was in charge, have done. We are $37 trillion in debt. How many times has the government shut down, or at least attempted or threatened to shut down, just within the past 20, 25 years? I think it's on up around 60, 70, maybe 80 times. That they keep talking about, well, let's raise the debt ceiling. Let's raise the debt ceiling. Let's raise it. Let's raise it. Let's raise it. Let's keep kicking the can down the road. Let's kick the can down the road and let some other administration deal with it. These children that are growing up are very, very bright. They're not stupid. And they're not fools. And they're not going to give somebody something that they don't deserve. They intend to be paid for their talents, just like the elderly people was paid for their talents. And whenever you have a society that's not willing to right the wrongs, then you're pouring fuel on the fire towards asking for trouble. And that's what's going on here in the good old USA. And that's the reason why people like Putin continues to keep saying that they've been cheated, they've been cheated, they've been cheated. And they have been. But not only has the Russian government been cheated, pertaining to the Christian society over here trying to stifle prophecy rather than support prophecy, to the degree that we could have already seen a worldwide revival and a revolution, to the degree that we would all be living in some sort of harmony and peace. But they didn't want that. They didn't want that. They wanted all these gory movies, and they wanted all these games to impenetrate people's minds. They wanted to take religion or God out of the schools and no longer mandate children to pledge allegiance to our very own country, even though this is the greatest country that's ever come into existence. For every action requires a reaction. And this is the reason why you're having goofballs like this come out of the woodwork and doing the acts that they're doing. And if you intensify that with your liberal laws, with your liberal attorneys, with your messed up psychiatric world that wants to put everybody in the same level, well, little Johnny shouldn't be held responsible for what little Johnny done because his dad or his mother mistreated him because he peed in the bed. Well, whenever you have a society that's doing this, you're asking for it. You're asking for a sick, deranged, cruel, violent society, and that's what we've got.
Childish, something that you might suspect from a 22-year-old kid.
Do we know much more about his upbringing? Do we know anything at this point in terms of like family background?
Well, what we know is I see that we have on air now the photographs that were posted on his mother's Facebook page. And all that you can tell from that is that he seemed to be a part of a very loving family. They went on fishing trips. A lot of pictures from those. The mother would document her dates with her sons, going out to dinner at certain times. It seemed like an incredibly loving family, celebrated momentous occasions and vacations and life events, 2 brothers. It's shocking.
Danny, let's talk.
See, he was doing it just for the kicks. Wasn't nothing wrong with his raising. Looking at it from a psychiatric standpoint, he was doing it as being a celebrity hound, seeking celebrityism.
This capital first-degree felony conduct, are those the charges you expect ultimately to be filed?
In Utah, not necessarily at the federal level, and I do expect federal charges will be seriously contemplated, if not charged, relatively soon. And really the most significant...
But I'm going to say one other thing before I turn this off. There's still not no accountability pertaining to especially somebody that was related directly to Donald J. Trump and Donald J. Trump's political party, the Republican political party, knowing how crazy that the world has become towards not having adequate security there. And whenever I say adequate security, I'm not talking about a whole army detail following Mr. Clark around every time he got ready to speak, but there should have been more advanced security there. And because of it, once more, the adults set up an arena, set up basically a scenario that played itself out. And if anybody should be held accountable, it should be the adults, because the adults is supposed to know more than the children. They're supposed to be the leaders. If anything, they used this Mr. Clark guy, knowing that he had good talents, knowing that he could resonate with the young group, knowing that the things that because I've heard some of his speeches pertaining to the Constitution. There was nothing never really in the Constitution pertaining to separation of church and state. That didn't come about until about 50, 75 years later, that some other person made a suggestion towards. And the next thing you know, we've been fed all these lies about what our Constitution actually originated from to begin with. Mr. Clark was preaching a very, very righteous message pertaining to the righteousness of God, pertaining to how we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to conduct our lives. There was nothing wrong with what he was doing. So he was either attacked out of a spiritual demonic figure pertaining to anti-Semitism, or he was attacked because of a young individual that was raised up good, had everything in the world that you could think of towards being right, because he wanted to play the celebrity card. He was a celebrity hound, and he felt like that if he nailed this person that already had a sense of celebrityism about them, that he could get on the same plateau as what he was on. And you know what? He has succeeded. Every time they show this guy's face, every time they talk about this guy, he's becoming more and more famous. And if the truth be known, he's liable to end up becoming more famous than what Mr. Clark had already worked towards. Mr. Clark was doing his duties. Mr. Clark was a very passionate person. He was trying to govern the people and alert the people and awaken the people in a godly way. And I think that's one reason why that it struck a good chord with Donald Trump, is because the things that Donald Trump preached and believed in corresponded a lot with what Mr. Clark was preaching and teaching and corresponding with, and because of it, it made a good fit. It made a good fit. But at the same time, they let their guard down. At the same time, they was using this guy. Just like all along, they've been using me pertaining to preaching this message of peace, coming from the founder of the Jubilees Windmill Ministries that changed to Jesus Christ Jubilees Windmill Ministries. They've been using me in saying that they wanted peace, but in reality, we've seen society going in the opposite direction of peace. We hear a government wanting to tell everybody else how to live a peaceful, united life, but yet no, the United States has been more divided now than what it's ever been. Counterproductive. Saying one thing, but doing just the very opposite. White man speaketh with forked tongue. As I said before, the individual that done this either done it to make a name for himself, or he done it because of the wicked demonic spirits that was in him that drove him into him doing what he done, which is once more another fulfillment of the prophecy that Satan will come down in great wrath because he knoweth his time is short, in entering into these people, not just this particular person, but all of them. Anybody that's going to commit a heinous act like this, it has to be done evil. It's evil that does this. The only time that you can be recognized as being justifiable in harming somebody like this is if you feel independent that your life is in harm, that your life is basically going to be taken. In other words, you're doing it for defense. This is evil in the fullest form of Satan entering into these people and causing these people to erupt this way. But then again, you got to look at it from another way. It must be evil in the fullest form that has blinded the eyes of the adults, that has blinded the eyes of the leadership of the elderly and the adults, because look where they've left everybody standing. They've left them standing with a bag, and the bag's been empty. They have allowed for all this stuff to inundate our lives, such as, they want to point their finger at Biden, pertaining to what he either done or didn't do, which that's fine, but you can't just stop at Biden. You got to go on down to the Obamas. You got to go on down to the Clintons. You got to go on down to the Bushes, and you got to go on down to the other groups of people going back about 30, 35, 40 years ago. If you're really going to nail the core of origin and where it began. What did Jesus say about, he used a parable as in salt for an illustration pertaining to the gospel, that if salt has lost its potency, what good is it other than to be trampled down by the foot of man? He was using that as an illustration pertaining to the gospel. What good is the gospel if you've watered it down and you tell everybody, well, it's okay for you to do whatever that you want to do as long as you pronounce or announce the name of Jesus Christ under the indulgence laws that one of the popes opened up one of the Portlands on. You can do whatever that you want to do, and you're still going to be taken care of, just like if you was living a true, holy, righteous life. That is a lie coming out of the very pits of hell. Any preacher that tells you that it's okay for you to commit adultery, it's okay for you to steal, it's okay for you to lie, it's okay for you to commit adultery, it's okay for you to break all the commandments of God, that just because you announce or pronounce the name of Jesus Christ, you're still a born-again Christian and everything's going to be hunky-dory. So really and truly, where the fault actually falls, it falls upon the pulpits of the preachers, of those that didn't stand firm, that allowed for this to get in this shape beginning in Kenton, Tennessee. Beginning at the White House. Especially whenever Obama done what they done towards the Supreme Court legalizing same-sex marriages, that basically didn't just formulate in America, but that went worldwide towards your LGBTQ rainbow color people. Basically come out of the woodwork and said, oh, we can do whatever we want to do now, and we can do it openly and proudly. We don't have to be in the closet no longer. You see what I'm saying about watering down the gospel? Watering down the truth pertaining to what has always been taught in a righteous sense towards what is godly and what isn't godly, what is right and what is wrong. Whenever you have a society that's gone this far off to the left field, you can expect this type of damage. You can expect a bloody road ahead. And that's the reason why that I predicted what I predicted in 2005, after I went through all this stuff down here in Weakley County, and I had to move to Davidson County. About a month before Katrina hit, I made up a t-shirt to send to the 43rd president of a bloody road ahead. Do you think that I sent that t-shirt because I wanted a bloody road ahead? If you do, you're demented. You're evil in your thinking, because nobody in their right mind wants to live in a society that is become as dangerous as what our society has become. But I could see it shifting. And as it was shifting, that's whenever I said, okay, it's time to put out the advisory, put out the warning, Juby. A bloody road ahead. And then it wasn't long after that, God moved upon my heart again in the year 2007 towards stating the fact of the weather phenomenons getting worse and worse, and seeing the erraticalnesses in the forces of nature. I put out another advisory. What was that advisory? Electrical disturbances to come. Major electrical disturbances was coming around the corner in some form or fashion. If it wasn't coming because of solar flares or other electronical shutdowns, it was coming in the form of all the disasters all over the planet. But once more, how did the people in Kentucky accept that warning or accept that advisory? They done the exact same thing, just like Homeland Security did up in Nashville, Tennessee, towards wanting to put it in the category of being a threat more so than a warning. Now, why was they doing that to Juby? You think it had something to do with how they actually felt about Juby? Or do you think it had something to do with the spirit that was driving them Secret Service agents up there in Nashville, Tennessee, towards let's get this guy? Especially after Katrina hit, they sure enough attacked me up there in Nashville, Tennessee, pertaining to Homeland Security. I've been attacked by the judicial system here in America, beginning at the top, that the Reagans and the Bushes played a part in. Whenever 9 cassette tapes wound up going to the White House in the year 1988, during the time of Jimmy Swaggart falling from grace and the Assembly of God Church out of Springfield, Missouri, kicking him off the board. I've been attacked in some form or fashion, just like my rights pertaining to a ministry, having the right of having a contained container that had a sword in it. It wouldn't have mattered if it would have been a bugle. It wouldn't have mattered if it had been a cross. It wouldn't have mattered if it would have been a purple piece of cloth. It wouldn't have mattered if it would have been the Bible inside that container. The feds did not have a right in tearing open that container and getting what they got, which was basically a fake sword, something made out of aluminum, something that you would use in Sinbad and the Sailors on a play with a bunch of kids in it, that you couldn't hurt hardly nobody unless you swung it super hard, like a stick or a bat. That's the only way you'd hurt anybody with it, because it was dull. But yet, no, they want to charge me with a deadly weapon, knowing that it was Homeland Security Secret Service that was supervising that little shindig up in Jackson, Tennessee, in Madison County. And to think that I went to the judge here in Weakley County that hadn't been a judge for long, asking him, what can you do about this? I explained to him what this was about, or halfway explained to him what it was about. You can't take up all the guy's time. I can't help you, Dennis. It's out of my jurisdiction. I can't help you. All right, Mr. Moore, you didn't help me. But now, look at the hurt that you've caused. Look at the hurt that you've caused, Kenton, Tennessee. Going all the way back to 1983, whenever I was attacked, and rightfully, what you should have done was arrest my father for attempted murder, because I had 2 pieces of flesh in my belly pulling it together with 64 staples in it. And maybe, at the very most, I should have went to Martin, Tennessee towards seeing what was going on pertaining to my blood level. Blood pressure too high, too low, sugar too high, too low. What's going on with this guy? But instead, no, we're going to mark him. We're going to throw him in a psychiatric ward, and from then on, we can prove to the rest of the society that this guy is off his rocker. And of course, after 9/11 happened, and once they realized that they wasn't going to be able to do that with me, then they changed their strategy. Well, let's not just try to prove to the society that this guy is a nut, but let's try to prove to society that he's a homegrown terrorist, or has the potential towards being a homegrown terrorist. Man, did I ever see that snowball. It went from 205 in Weakley County, Martin, Tennessee, from 207 up here in Kentucky, around Grand Rivers, Calvert City, Benton, Paducah, Kentucky. Then in 209, the snowball even growed that much more, to the degree that they put a bomb in the back of my truck up here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and activated it and put me all over national news like I was would be another Timothy McVeigh. And you wonder how come the youth is responding the way that the youth is responding. Quit wondering, for God's sakes, and start accepting your responsibilities for what that you have done. Northwest Tennessee, the White House, and all them other politicians that basically panhandled off of the American people's money. In the meantime, not only was they not doing their jobs for the American people, but they were stuffing their own pockets. Like Dick Cheney goes into power being worth $4 million and comes out being valued at over $40 million. How can you do that, making like $250,000 a year, and you're in there for 8 years? How can you do that? You can't. He had to be making money on the other end some way or another, and that's what all of them does, including Nancy Pelosi. But yet, no. They want to degrade Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump ain't drawed a penny from the government that I know of. And if anything, Donald Trump is actually taking money out of his own fund to be able to take care of certain things and to do certain things for the American people. If I'm not mistaken, it was Donald Trump that paid for the 2 flagpoles that recently got put up, that should have been put up 25 years ago. People are stagnated down here. They don't want to grow. They don't want to evolve. They don't want to listen. They don't want to accept the facts of the facts being the facts. They want to whitewash it. They want to throw it under the carpet. They want to act like that we're the nuts. Even though people like me and people like this individual right here was talking and speaking the truth that was very, very incredibly sensible.
He worked so hard and so well. Everybody liked him.
NBC White House correspondent Yamiche Dawson joins us now. Yamiche, talk to us a little bit more about the relationship between President Trump and Charlie Kirk, and how much influence did Kirk have inside the White House?
And I'm gonna turn it off here. And that's another thing. The media, they roll like a rolling tumbling bug. I don't know if you've ever seen a rolling tumbling bug on the farm that basically gathers up manure, and they'll roll that piece of manure, and they'll keep rolling it and keep rolling it and keep rolling it, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger like a snowball. Well, that's how our media does. Our media It's like a rolling tumbling bug. They'll go from one story to another.
A lot of voters. So Donald Trump Jr. said that he would count him as one of the people who was most influential when it came to delivering the presidency for the president. The president also echoing the fact that he had a big impact on his win. So this was someone who this White House is grieving for, just not only politically as someone who was, of course, a big voice in the conservative movement, but also as someone they knew personally. I know a lot of staffers who were crying, who were shocked.
Okay, he's acknowledging the potential in this individual towards his value, but yet no, they wasn't willing to make sure that there were certain steps taken pertaining to his safety. People are tired of hearing one side of the story and one side of the story only, and I blame the media for that, because I guarantee you they'll stay on this right here for probably about 4 or 5 days, maybe a week, until another story comes up, and then they'll be like that tumbling bug. They'll move from that area to where the spotlight is again. And then they'll go from that spotlight to whoever makes the headlines again. Do you not see what the media is doing? The media has actually become more so part of the problem than the solution to it. Because why? Because of them doing things unethically, like they're doing right now by showing this guy's face and making him famous. Come on, people. I wasn't born. I might have been born at night, but it wasn't last night. I know I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm not the dullest one neither. And if people like me can see this and understand this and identify with this, how come other people can't do the same? I'm going to tell you why. Because they don't want to. They don't want to accept their responsibilities. They want to put it off on somebody else. Well, let's blame this one. Just like kicking the can down the road. Well, let's let some other administration deal with it. Let's kick the can down the road. Let's keep going like we're going. We're feeding our own pockets. We're fattening our pockets. In the meantime, our courts is becoming more and more corrupt. The swamp is getting deeper and deeper. Deeper and deeper. And to the point of where we are right now. God's sakes, Lord Jesus, please help us. I just pray that somehow or another there will be a great movement in this great country to put us back where we're supposed to be in the sight and in the eyes of the Lord Jesus Christ. God bless America. God bless our troops. And good luck to all of us. Shalom.